Hi friends, it's Amy. Welcome to my bookish life. Today I want to share with you the books that my students have been loving during the third quarter of the school year. So let's get to it. I asked all of my students to tell me their favorite book that they have been reading, and some of them gave me one book, and some of them gave me a bunch of books, and some of them gave me a whole series. Here they are in no particular order, except that they're the order I wrote them down in. So first of all, let's talk about Spy School. I had multiple students tell me about how much they have been enjoying the Spy School series. I have talked about this series so much on my channel. It's by Stuart Gibbs. Finds his way into spy school and is tasked with all of these mysterious things that are happening and saving the world. It's great. It's wonderful. It has a wacky cast of characters, and I just love it. And I'm so glad that it is something that I can talk to my students about. It's great. The next book that I want to talk about is actually not one that I have read, but it has been on my TBR for a really long time, and I'm kind of sort of jealous that one of my students got to read it, and that is The Strangers by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is part of the Greystone Secrets series. Margaret Peterson Haddix is an author that I gravitate towards because I love her writing style and I love her imagination. The stories that this woman comes up with are amazing. Running Out of Time is one of my favorite books to share with kids, and it's just my goal to read more from her. So The Strangers says the Greystone kids thought they knew. Chess has always been the protector over his younger siblings. Emma loves math, and Finn does what Finn does best, acting silly and being adored. They've been a happy family, just the three of them and their mom, but everything changes when reports of 3 kidnapped children reach the Greystone kids, and they're shocked by the startling similarities between themselves and these complete strangers. The other kids share the same first and middle names, they're the same age, they even have identical birthdays. Who exactly are these strangers? It's just, oh man. Yeah, so that will be read by me at some point. I'm so glad that it got on my students' radar, and I'm sure she's going to continue on with this series. The next book is The Crossover by Kwame Alexander. This book I have read, and I really love it. I totally co-sign this recommendation. The Crossover is a novel in verse, which it intimidates a lot of students, but they also want the basketball story. So you have a basketball story, you have a novel in verse, you gotta weigh your options, and thankfully he chose right. The Crossover follows Josh Bell and his twin brother Jordan Bell, and they are navigating middle school. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of sports. There's a lot of action, and I love it. Next, I have a bunch of students who are reading the series Wings of Fire. Wings of Fire is by T. Sutherland. It is about different tribes of dragons that are immersed in this huge war started by one of the tribes of dragons, and there's this small group of dragonettes, baby dragons, who are supposed to stop the war. And there are some people that are okay with that, and there are some people that are not okay with, there are some dragons that are okay with that, and there are some dragons that aren't okay with that, and chaos ensues. It is very much an engaging series. I absolutely agree. I have read the first 3 books in this series. Many of my students are much farther than I am, but I do plan on continuing. The next book that I want to talk about is Unplugged by Gordon Korman. This book I'm really excited about because I read this book out loud to them and they chose it as their favorite of the quarter. I'm actually going to talk about this more in my March wrap up because obviously I finished it in March, but we have Jet Baronoff, who is a rich, spoiled brat, his words, not mine, and his father sends him to the Oasis Wellness Center when he gets in a particularly big heap of trouble. The Oasis has no electricity. They are not, well, it has electricity, but they're not allowed to use electronics. So no phones, no tablets, off limits. And there are some crazy things happening at this center, and nobody believes Jet when he tells them that there's crazy things happening because all they see is how much he hates the fact that he doesn't get to have his phone with him. So chaos again ensues, and it's delightful. I love this story. Absolutely co-sign. It did get mixed reviews from my 5th and 6th graders. I have to say about half the class really, really liked it. A quarter of the class thought it was okay, and a quarter of the class didn't really like it at all. So it did get mixed reviews, but you're going to have that. The next book that I want to talk about is actually also a series, and that is the Jedi Academy series by Jeffry Brown. This book, I gotta say, I also co-sign. It is funny and delightful, and I don't even like Star Wars. Please don't come at me. Here we follow Roan's Doodles as he enters the Jedi Academy and is learning to become a Jedi pilot. It is really fun, told largely through illustrations, basically graphic novel-ish, and it's just a lot of fun. I really like it. The next book that I was told to talk about was Greenglass House by Kate Milford. And again, I really like this book. So this follows Milo, and his parents run the Greenglass House, which is like an inn, and it's usually not very busy around Christmas. However, it is very busy this Christmas, and there are all kinds of crazy, mysterious reasons why, and you just are along for the ride. It's so fun, so mysterious, and I really liked it. At least 2 of my students told me to talk about this one, so take that as you will. The next book is also a book that I don't have, but has also been on my TBR, and I'm kind of jealous that she was able to read this, and I have not gotten to yet. That is Wilderlore, The Accidental Apprentice by Amanda Foody. And this, I absolutely have been wanting to read since it was chosen for Middle Grade Monthly, and Amy at A Star Reads was talking about it, and she raved about it. So when my student showed up to school with this book in her hand, I was like, where have you found that? Goodreads says the last thing Barclay Thorne ever wanted was an adventure. Thankfully, as an apprentice to the town's mushroom farmer, Barclay need only work hard and follow the rules to one day become the head mushroom farmer himself. No danger required, but then Barclay accidentally breaks his town's most sacred rule: never, ever, ever stray into the woods, for within the woods lurks vicious magical beasts. That just sounds so good. So good. Of course, I can't get through a quarter without Big Nate being one of the favorites. Big Nate is by Lincoln Pierce. It follows a young man named Nate who is navigating the halls of his middle school. There are 2 separate series that follow Nate. One is prose and one is comic style novels, because originally Big Nate I think it still is, a comic strip. And so my students very much prefer the comic strips, but everybody loves Big Nate. Then we have some Gary Paulsen. One of my students wanted to explore the world of Hatchet again. He read Brian's Winter, and that follows Brian from Hatchet, but it imagines a world in which the book Hatchet actually took place during the winter. So it imagines Brian being stuck in the wilderness in the winter. In Hatchet, Brian actually is in a plane crash in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, and he is lost and needs to survive. One of their former teachers reads it out loud to them, which actually kind of breaks my heart because I love Hatchet and I would love nothing more than to read Hatchet aloud to my students, but she outranks me. So the next book that I have written down is Soup by Robert Newton Peck. You guys, this one is an oldie, but one of my students was just really needed something. He's like, and I just want it to be funny. I want it to be quick. And I just can't take anything serious right now. And I was like, okay, I gotcha. Here is Soup. He gave me a funny look, but man, he really liked it. Turned out to be one of his favorites. I love sharing the Soup books with my kids. They're so old, but the scrapes that Soup and Robert get into are just hilarious. These books are based on the real life adventures of Robert Newton Peck, the author, and his best friend, Soup, who, spoiler alert, grows up to be a reverend. They're engaging, and they're the original Big Nate and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but, you know, something different. So very excited that this made the cut on this list. The Comeback Kids series by Mike Lupica is also on this list. Mike Lupica is always a hit in my classroom. He writes a lot of sport adventures normally. However, he does have some other like fantasy type things as well. I have not read a lot of Mike Lupica. However, I have mad respect for this man because he gets my students to read and love it. So The Comeback Kids is a series of his, and one of my students was reading it. I don't really know how this series works, but I think they're all standalones, but they look at the underdogs in different sports. I think most of each one is a different sports team in a different sport. And I think the one that he was reading was 2 Minute Drill, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's the one about football. And so Chris Conlon is the coolest kid in 6th grade, the golden-armed quarterback of the football team, and the boy all the other boys look up to. Scott Perry's the new kid, the boy with the huge brain, but with feet that trip over themselves daily. These two boys may seem like an odd couple, but each has a secret that draws them together as friends and proves that the will to succeed is even more important than raw talent. Mike Lupica scores from downtown with his Comeback Kids series. So there's lots of action in these books, a lot of tension and suspense in these books, and my kids just really, really like them. Another middle grade on this list is The Series of Unfortunate Events. One of my students is reading through The Series of Unfortunate Events and wanted this series on the list. So that Series of Unfortunate Events is one that I have read in entirety. I really enjoyed. I know that it gets mixed reviews a lot, but I really enjoyed it. It follows 3 orphans Klaus, Violet, and Sunny, and they lose their parents in a particularly horrible way, and just a ton of unfortunate events just pile on top of each other throughout the whole series. And that sounds really grim, but I really liked it, and some of my students like it as well, obviously. So, I mean, then I have some YA books on this list. Quite a few of my students right now are enjoying the Maze Runner series. The Maze Runner, the first book in the series, follows Thomas, who wakes up in this cargo hold that carries him up into this prairie. What is it called? What do they call it? The Glade. Wakes up in the Glade surrounded by all these other boys who also don't really know how they got there. They only know their name and they know that they're there, and they have this whole society formed, and it's really kind of fascinating. I have read the first book in this series. I have not read past that. However, my students are highly encouraging me to, and I'm hoping to at some point. I started reading the second one, The Scourge Trials, and I didn't get very far. And I don't know if it was just the wrong book at the wrong time. I don't know that it was the right time for me to read that. So at some point I want to get to it. If nothing else, I want to get to the Death Cure because so many of them are telling me how wonderful the Death Cure is. So I'll work on it. The Hunger Games is is a series that you would have to live under a rock if you don't know what it is. However, it follows Katniss. I don't know what to say about the Hunger Games that hasn't been said already, but I am so glad that my students are finding the series now and are loving it, because it just grabs you right away from the beginning and takes off. One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This book is definitely not unknown in the booktube community. It was recently made into I think it's a limited series or a movie. I don't know which one, on the Peacock network. And it follows a group of students in detention, and one of the students dies, and the rest of the students are being implicated in his murder. It reminds me a lot of Pretty Little Liars and The Breakfast Club, but it's a fairly engaging story. It wasn't my favorite YA ever. However, I liked it. So the next one on the YA list is the Matched series by Ali Condie. This again is dystopian. I've got a handful of students that are like hardcore dystopian lovers right now. It's great. It's awesome. I love it. In the society, officials decide who you love, where you work, and when you die. And Cassia trusts their choices. And on the night that she is supposed to be matched, she sees more than one face on the screen. So she's matched with one person, but there's also another person like there that she's also matched with. And she's like, what is happening? And then through that, situation devolves further and further. It's a great series. I really enjoyed it. My students do recommend the whole series, but of the three, Reached, which is the third one, is their favorite. So there you go. The next YA book on my list is The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. So it says, after the first wave, only darkness remains. After the second, only the lucky escape. After the third, only the unlucky survive. After the fourth wave, only one rule applies: trust no one. Now it's the dawn of the fifth wave, and on a lonely stretch of highway, Cassie runs from them. The beings who only look human, who roam the countryside, killing anyone they see, who have scattered Earth's last survivors. That does not in any way sound like something that I would enjoy. However, some of my students really love it, and all the power to them. Yeah. It is a series, I think. Yes, it is a series. It's a series of, it's a trilogy. Trilogy? It's a trilogy. It's a trilogy. There you go. So it's the fifth wave, the infinite sea, and the last star. I don't know. I say that I don't gravitate towards alien type science fiction. However, I have not enjoyed the alien type science fiction that I have read. So I might need to rethink that position. Anyway, the next YA series on here is the Divergent series. The Divergent series is by Veronica Roth. The first one is Divergent. It follows Tris Pryor, in which the society is divided into 5 factions. And if you fit into more than one faction, you're known as Divergent, and it is terrible to be divergent. It's like this big taboo thing. Taboo thing. I have read the series. It's been years since I read it. I don't know when I read it, but it was at least 5 years ago that I read it. But I did really enjoy it, and I totally co-sign on this series, as many people do. Another book that they asked me to talk about is The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. This book I talked about last month in my February 2022 wrap up, because again, this is the book that I read out loud to them, which makes my heart happy that it made the list of books that they loved. This follows Helmut Hebner as he goes from being the most patriotic German you will ever find to a youth who is absolutely opposed to everything Hitler stands for. And it's a very engaging story. It's based on a true story. And I really, really enjoyed it. Again, it got mixed reviews. Many of my students did like it, but a few of my students did not like it and thought that it was a little hard to follow. So there you go. Take with that where you will. The last book that I want to talk about is, again, a series by Joelle Charbonnet, and that is The Testing. This is a piece of translated fiction. I was looking for more dystopian books because my students are going through dystopian books like nobody's business, and I love it. Okay, I do. But I'm running out, guys. I am running out of dystopian books in my classroom for them to read. But thank goodness for libraries, because my wonderful librarian told me about The Testing. And in this, it says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Isn't that what they say? But how close is too close when they may be one and the same? The 7 Stages War left much of the planet a charred wasteland. The future belongs to the next generation's chosen few who must rebuild it. But to enter this elite group, candidates must first pass the testing. Their one chance at the college education and a rewarding career. This follows Sia Vale, who is honored to be chosen as a testing candidate, eager to prove her worthiness as a university student and future leader of the United Commonwealth. Also, it follows Thomas, who is her childhood friend. One of my students flew through this trilogy. It is amazing, she says. I had never heard of it before, and I've never seen it talked about on BookTube, which I'm sure that it's there. I just haven't seen it. And I really want to read this series now. I was able to find the first book at Half Price Books when I went shopping with my goddaughter the other day. So I have the first book in my possession now, and I would like to get to it if I can, wait until all of my students that want to read it get through it. All right, so there is a short list of books that my students have enjoyed during the third quarter of the 2021-2022 school year. I am so amazed by their ability to find books that they are enjoying and go with them and just keep on finding more and more. And I love talking books with my students, and I hope they love talking books with me. Do you agree with them? Do you maybe not? It's okay if you don't, but still be nice. I would love to chat with you down in the comments. If you liked this video, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more from me, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I hope that you're finding something wonderful to read. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.